All right, welcome to the WAC Attack Podcast. Today we have Brooks Dollar on. Brooks is an owner of a company that does boat restorations and specifically Chris Craft. Is that correct?
Chris Crafts, Rivas, Centuries.
Nice. And so you started this business in about 2004. Is my date's correct there?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And now, how did you get the idea to go into boat restoration?
I had done some restoration work on boats that I had for myself and was really interested in it. I was burnt out on working in the restaurant industry, which is what I had done up to that point. And
as a chef, correct?
That's right. I went to culinary school when I was 22 down in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, and I cooked from there on out. You know, I was in different restaurants. We lived in Sun Valley, Idaho, and I also lived in Portland, Oregon. That's where I got into the boat restoration business.
So now, do you build like specialty barbecues too? Do you bring the culinary skills to the boat restoration?
No, I don't. But I do love to eat barbecued meat.
Yeah.
Well, we got a guy for you.
Yeah, we do. We had an episode. Dave Guerra, he owns Buckethead Barbecue. It's a very popular food truck here in Northern California.
Oh, nice.
You start restoring boats from being a chef. Okay, so that's two very different tracks. How did this happen?
I was just tired of being in the kitchen. You know, basically, this long hours being a chef. You're there for 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and a lot of times you're doing this, you know, for 7 days a week, for months at a time. So I was really burnt out on the kitchen, and I thought, I want to do something else. And it was nice because the freedom of being able to work on the boats. You're outside a lot of times, and what I started doing in Portland, where we lived, was it wasn't restoration right away. I was working with a company that was basically a repair facility. So they did anything from yachts that were 80 feet to a 17-foot ski boat. So I learned a lot of the different trades through that company.
So you didn't necessarily like make the jump of starting your own business or being a chef. You went and worked for another company, learned the ropes, everything else. I think that's very similar to a lot of the experiences we have from other entrepreneurs who are here. How long did you work there for?
I was there for about a year. So I had started working there in 2003, somewhere thereabouts. And I could see it was basically just, it was a guy who owned the company, and there were 4 other shipwrights basically that worked there. And that was fine. We had plenty of work, and there was always, interesting work going on. There was some restoration, there was some sailboat work, there were, installation of equipment, electronics, basically everything you run across on a boat. And I could see that he was getting further and further away from being interested in, he'd been doing it for 25 years. The guy was, he was 62, he wanted to be retired. And I could see, I'd go in the morning, and he would have all the estimates on his desk, lined up. You could see there's all this work that he wasn't actively chasing. He was estimating it, some of it, but these were all just, calls.
The passion wasn't there to make the money anymore.
No, he just didn't care. He wanted to go play, and which is totally reasonable. At that age, I wouldn't want to do it either, really. So I kind of approached him and said, hey, I'd like to take over if you want to retire. So we worked out a deal, and I took over from him and basically bought the business. I didn't buy the building that it was in. We had a 6,000 square foot shop that we rented for next to nothing. I look back on it now, and it was just we had 2 offices and a 6,000 square feet of floor space, and I think we paid $2,300 a month. So.
In Tahoe?
No, it was in Portland.
Oh,
Portland.
I'm sorry. Continue.
We were just in Tahoe over the weekend. It's all right.
So that worked out well. I kept the same guys that were working there already. Got rid of a couple, added a couple, and then from there we really just took off.
I want to ask you a question about when you said you got rid of a couple. One of the things that I think is important. I don't think many people or anybody really is quite frankly as good at hiring, because humans are easily fooled just kind of by nature. Sure. And so we have to make an estimated guess based on who we see. And so once they get in the door and you've hired them, I think the best thing that we have to do as business owners is to assess the job performance and learn to fire somebody quickly if what they were saying doesn't match what they're doing.
Sure.
And you recognize that you needed to get rid of a couple of people. Can you talk to us about the characteristics that made you make the decision to say, hey, I want to fire Jack and Bob?
Yeah, part of it wasn't so much their job performance. It was their attitude and the way that they would, just not want to work, or they didn't want to do the job that I needed them to do. So that was pretty clear right away on, and part of it was resentment that, I had been there a year. Some of these guys had been there for 4 or 5 years, and, the new guy comes in and takes over. So,
well, the new guy saw the opportunity. Sorry for interrupting.
I did, and they also had the same opportunity. So but they didn't, and I think they wanted to. That was part of it. Was 2 or 3 of the guys wanted to, but they could never work amongst themselves to make it work.
They never had the balls to do what you did.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I'm just going to come out and say it.
Yeah.
You were there for a year, and you saw the forest through the trees, and you basically just came out and said, I'm going to stick my head on the chopping block because I want this, and I'm not going to let it fail.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it. I was 28, and I was like, well, I'm ready to jump into something. And
Any kids at home at the time, or was it just you?
No kids.
No kids.
Topic of hiring and firing.
Mm-hmm.
You said the attitude was really poor for the people who were there that you got rid of. What about the people you replaced them with?
Replaced them with people that I basically someone knew this guy, and he would come in, or someone else who was working in a different marine facility would come in, and that worked out really well.
Yeah.
Because especially the guy who was a worker at another facility, he was really good, and he was fast and was able to just jump in and
go
do what we needed to do.
Minimal guidance.
Oh yeah, minimal. And a couple of the guys were boat school guys from Port Townsend. So there's a wooden boat school in Port Townsend, and I think they have maybe a 18-month program that a lot of these guys will go through. So they'll learn wooden boat construction, systems, things like that.
You said they did wood boats, they did restoration, they did sailboats, they did all this other stuff.
Right.
Did you take it into a specific area and niche it up?
Not initially. Initially, I stuck with what was going, what was working, what we normally did, and then later on, I guess about 3 years in, I had the opportunity to buy a rigging business. So, a rigging business is anything that holds the masts up on the sailboats, all the wires, all the control systems for the sails. So I was able to buy a machine that swedged the fittings on the ends. So we started making standing rigging and running rigging and doing control systems for sailboats.
So I'm not a sailor, and I definitely know Alan isn't either.
Yar.
Could you explain that one? Can you explain how that was beneficial for your business to us like we're 5 years old?
Sure. Yeah, it just added another component of what we could do. So
was that a highly desired component?
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's very specialized. So luckily I was able to train with a rigger who was well known in the area, who his wife had died. She had a brain aneurysm. She's 49, and he wanted to check out. So I was able to, it was a tragedy for him, and I hated it to happen, but he came to me, and we were able to make something work where he trained me for a year on all the equipment and all the rigging aspects for the sailboats, and then I bought his equipment.
Yeah, mutually beneficial relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically nature.
Yeah.
The fundamental law of nature.
So that made you the only player in town who could do the rigging.
There was one other. Yeah.
Okay, but I mean it's
That was it.
50-50 chance you're getting the business.
Yeah.
So can we fast forward a little bit? So that was in Portland. Obviously, we're here in Roseville, California.
Sure.
How did you get all the way here now?
In 2014, my wife had been working with her father, who has done a lot of development for commercial real estate here in Sacramento, North Highlands. He started out with rental units, residential, and then went on to build commercial industrial. So she's been managing that since 2013, and really kind of that's how we ended up here. Well, let me rewind. In 2008, obviously things just fell apart. And
you were in a luxury business.
Yes, the phone stopped ringing, and so I laid off everyone except for 2 guys, and we just tried to make it work. keep the doors open, but there was nothing going on. It was bleak at that time. So in 2009, we decided to just go ahead and close the doors, and I moved everything home, and I just worked as a sole individual, just a sole proprietor out of my garage. I had a large 3-car garage that I was able to set up my rigging equipment.
Honey, you get the house, the garage, just go out the front door.
It worked out great, actually. So I just did a lot of rigging out of my garage. I just, and because it doesn't require a ton of space. I had a 60-foot long bench, so my garage was 60 feet. So that's what I needed to make the rigging. And
Yeah.
Wait, how did you have a 60-foot deep 3-car garage?
it was long, so 60-foot long. Yeah, well,
okay.
I guess it was 3. I say 3, but it was
It
we
really
had
more
3.
like 6.
Yeah,
Because I was
bays.
thinking a 3-car garage is technically a 10 by 10 times 6
No, well, this wasn't a
standard.
standard. It had been
Okay.
built as actually the guy we bought the house from had a hot tub business, and he built that as a showroom for his hot tubs. So
That's pretty cool though. And I think that, during that time frame, the
Mhm.
reason why our father was able to stay through business, because he was always a one-man show. He predominantly did a lot of finish work.
Mhm.
And so he had just never taken the risk to bring on employees or anything like that. And he was good all the way through because it was just always him the whole time,
Mhm.
And so going back to that, did that sort of give you like a sense of purpose, like reconnecting with the work that you were doing?
It definitely took away the stress. It was very stressful having the employees and just all the things that go along with that. It's difficult to manage. At one time we had 7 people working there, and so that was difficult because I'm still working myself, and I'm also the person who's getting the work. I'm selling the jobs and doing the invoicing and ordering, and so.
So you didn't really ever get out of the owner-operator role?
No, we were never able to transition it from where I was able to step back and have it just run as its own. I had to be there.
Right.
So I actually have a question around that topic. So while you were working out of your garage, obviously you can control the level of the quality of the craftsmanship of the work. Prior to that, when you had the employees, how were you handling the quality controls to make sure that the products that were coming out, the work that was coming out was meeting the standards that you had for the business?
I was very hands-on. I was involved with everyone. So I would, the way my day would go is we'd get together in the mornings just like any other, trade and kind of go through what we're working on for the day and who's doing what. And these projects were ongoing. Some of these were 2 or 3 month long projects. It would be, not just installation of one piece of equipment. A lot of times these boats are out of the water for, a month at a time, or we're working on them in the marina, or they're in our shop. So they can be long-term projects.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how I did it. Every day I was with the guys who were working, basically just doing laps.
Just very hands-on. Take us back to the timeline, the story for how we go from there to Sacramento.
So from there, I was at another yard. It was actually the largest yard in our area. It was our main competition. And they brought me on as a shipwright. I was the lead shipwright for that yard. So
what is a shipwright?
A shipwright is a person who basically knows how to do everything for all of the different trades in the marine industry. So and then I was in charge of the woodworkers. I was in charge of the painters, coordinating their work. So there were 45 employees at that place. So it was a larger operation than what we had, and they were a much nicer facility.
And
So it was on 10 acres.
So you were pretty busy then.
I was pretty busy.
Now, but you're still doing the boat restoration right now?
At myself at this time, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now you're back here and you're in Northern California.
Sure.
And so now you do this all yourself, right? And so I would assume that maybe you take you pick and choose the projects that you want to work on, the ones that you probably enjoyed.
Yeah, there's definitely things that I don't want to do, and I, really at this point, I really just want to, fix a plank or have hardware removed and re-chromed, varnish. I don't want to do any engine work or anything to do with any fuel systems, anything like that.
So you just focus in on the restoration.
The restoration. Yeah, the restoration. Ideally, I would replace bottoms on Chris Crafts, and because a lot of them were built, they call it carvel planking. So the planks are built, the mahogany planks are side by side, And what happens over time is they swell every time they get in the water. So when they put them in, they leak for a day or two, and then the wood swells up. And over time, the fasteners, basically pull the wood away, and it becomes more like a basket case. And so over time, they need to be either replaced, the bottoms, or repaired. So what's happened since we've gotten epoxy and all these magic goos, we're able to change out the old Carvel planking with marine plywood and fiberglass, and so you end up with a much better bottom. So it's you don't have to worry about it leaking.
So what's the difference between the new marine materials and the wood? Obviously, one is engineered, but what's the difference with those for shelf life, or not shelf life, but how long they last and all the problems that they solve?
Just the problem is there's no water intrusion. There's no water coming in. There's no swelling the boat. You don't have to wait for it to swell up before you can use it. You can just put it in the water and go.
Wow, that's really interesting, because we grew up on the water.
Mm-hmm.
Family had boats and other things, jet skis, houseboat, all that fun stuff. And every time you see a Chris craft, go down the water, you think, man, that's a really nice looking boat. I had no clue if that was an original wood boat. You had to actually let it be in the water and let it swell up. And when it swells up, then they probably run a bilge pump the whole time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. I didn't know that.
And you have to really keep an eye on it, because they'll sink. It happens a lot. The boat's been out for a few years, hasn't been in the water. People who don't know will put it in the water and think that they're going to go put it on the mooring ball, and the battery dies, or it can't keep up. The bilge pump can't keep up, or it gets clogged, and they'll sink.
Really? Yeah. So now, have you ever been involved in a recovery process?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
A couple of times. We had an interesting project that was a 42-foot commuter style boat. Basically, they built it in Lake Union up in Seattle. They built a bunch of these.
Yeah, no, what's that? We had Alan's bachelor party there.
Oh, did you? No kidding.
We watched the boat races and stuff there too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Small world. But there was one of these down in Portland that had been built in 1946, or it was old. It was Port Orford cedar was the planking, and it was it needed to have the stem replaced. So the piece at the very bow of the boat, very structural, it's where the planks are let into, and it needed to be replaced below the water line. So we were hauling it out at basically using a trucking company. A semi truck would pull up, and they usually have a hydraulic trailer. So they come up and they have these hydraulic pads that fit around the boat, and they can adjust and put the keel blocks under the truck and move this thing out of the water and into our shop. But this time he showed up with a different type of trailer, and it was more of a V-bunk, really long bunk trailer. And he, basically pulled down at the boat ramp, and we drove this thing on the trailer, and he started pulling out, and it just couldn't support the weight. And so it basically fractured a bunch of ribs and put a big hole in one side, and he immediately backed it back into the water.
Oh.
And it sunk just right there at the boat ramp. It was terrible. So we had to recover that.
Holy crap.
It was awful.
That's a happy boat owner, by the way.
Yeah, those were not good times. So, of course everyone sues everyone. So we had to go through a lawsuit with that, and we came out on top with it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the trucking company's fault.
Right, but they just initially the boat owner sued us and the trucking company. So
they have to hold somebody responsible. Yeah, you were just kind of caught in the crossfire.
So you have a luxury business, and then you go back to being basically an owner operator, single one man show, right? That has a lot of benefits in doing that. And I think that if you're on Instagram or these other places, you're looking up all these motivational quotes, and everybody's like, you need to make money, and you need to do this, and it's all about money, money, money. By going the route of, doing the work yourself and being an owner operator, what other areas of your life has that led to some improvements with, like travel or being able to spend time with your family? Like, where have those other benefits come from?
Sure. Well, it's freedom. You can work when you want to work. If it's midnight, and you want to put some time in, or if you want to take the week off or 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, it's as long as you're able to have the means to do it, then you have. As long as you don't book yourself, that's something too, is you can really put yourself in a situation where you're so booked up that you can't do anything. And of course, it's cyclical. Everyone wants their boat in June, right?
Yep.
So
how did we get from Portland, where you had a ridiculously deep 3-yard garage, to Sacramento, California?
that was it. So my wife and I packed up the 2 kids, and we said we're going to go ahead and jump into this. And like I said, she was working with her dad doing the property management.
Mm-hmm.
He was getting ready to go on a mission for the Mormon Church. He and his wife. So they're older, and the Mormon Church, a lot of the older people will do a 1.5-year mission somewhere in a different country. So they were actually going to Cambodia. So,
And that's not you, though.
that's not me.
Yeah.
No, that's my in-laws, and so that was them.
I was talking about the Mormon part.
Oh no,
Yeah.
that's so we ended up getting down here because of that reason. And he was going to be gone for 1.5 years. He needed boots on the ground, which was my wife.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you brought the business here. How'd you go
Mhm.
about the geographical change of still being able to get leads and business and everything else?
It's funny enough. I worked with yacht brokers in Portland who I would actually work with them down here in San Francisco. Like they would need
Discovery Bay, folks.
a boat. No, it was more of over in. Do you know where KKMI is? The boatyard. That's probably not. It's off of Cutting Boulevard and.
Sausalito.
That's Richmond.
It's Richmond.
That's where I lived.
Yeah, that's right. That was where I initially started when I came down. I thought, I'll probably work in the bay, but it was such a hassle. We had a boat as well. Obviously we had a sailboat, 36-foot sailboat that we had sailed, kind of transitioned there from.
You had it in Portland?
We had it, actually we had it in Mexico. So we had bought that boat in Mazatlán and actually brought the family down and sailed around, Puerto Vallarta and Mazatlán.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's a good time. I'd have to check the sea
Mm-hmm.
because I do not do good in a rough sea.
Alan got some experience
Yeah.
with that.
Oh,
So if it's something like, I wouldn't say easy sailing because sailing's not easy,
mhm.
but if the seas are relatively calm, it's definitely something that I would be willing to do.
There's some great days, but when you're on there full time, you're at the mercy of the weather. You don't know what's, and it depends on where you are. Like we got caught in a major storm. We were 100 miles offshore at this tiny island called Isla Isabela, and it's just basically a rock. It's 100 miles from Puerto Vallarta and 100 miles from Mazatlán, so it's way out there. We really got a beating on that one, but you're out there and you can't go anywhere. There's nowhere to go.
Wait,
And
so
you,
hold
and
on.
you don't have the
Who
United
is-
States Coast Guard either.
No, you don't.
Who was we?
Me and my wife and 2 kids.
Oh, tell us about that.
So we were anchored out, just enjoying, it's beautiful sandy, beach, and it's just this gorgeous area. There's all these frigate birds that nest on this island. So we were out hiking around, and it's uninhabited. So it's a very small island, and there's only 2 places you can anchor there. There's one that's a unprotected sandy bottom, and there's one that has more of a cove, but it has a really rocky bottom. But it eats anchors, so a lot of times you can get your anchor fouled in there, and you can't
get it
out.
back.
Yeah, exactly. So that we were not in a good spot to begin with. We were anchored in the place where in the cove. So we were out hiking around, and you kind of see it building throughout the day. Down there you can see these storms start to
You could
No.
just.
it's going to be.
Was it considered tropical where that island was at?
Yeah, I would say it's tropical.
You could see the storms building if you've ever done like the Costa Rica, Hawaii's, Bali's. You just kind
Exactly.
of see it starting to happen.
Well, and having grown up in Mississippi, I know you see these clouds. It's starting to form, and it's going to be a big one. And so we hopped on the boat, and it was like 5:00 in the evening. And we took off, and I figured we're probably safer, at sea than we were anchored in this small cove. So we took off, and about 30 minutes, an hour later, we just got hit with just these, frontline squall, just 45 knots of wind, and basically we did that for 10 hours, just tethered into the boat. And,
Holy shit.
yeah.
So how white were your hands at the end of that? Because you're thinking, like, what's going through your mind? You have your wife and your 2 kids, and you're
Sure.
sailing through a gnarly storm.
Right. Yeah. We were just I was thinking, let's stay away from land. We're okay in the sea. The problem is you have currents that run down the coast of Mexico, and so if you have wind that opposes them, a lot of times they'll stack the waves, so you get these very steep, choppy waves, and you'll get 10-foot pinnacles basically, and so you just there's no way you can't just set sail and just get on one tack and go that route
and ride it.
You can't, because there's the winds and the swirling, and it's coming from different directions, so it's just very miserable.
And for people who aren't sailors, could you explain tacting to them?
It's just basically you're on one's starboard or port tack, so you're sailing from one to the other. So you're just it's just a terminology of going on one direction.
Right, because that's how you catch the wind, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, you can't sail dead into the wind. You have to be.
It's a zigzag pattern.
Exactly. We're America's Cup fans.
Oh, there you go.
So,
sure.
We're familiar with the terms, but for some people who might not be,
mm-hmm.
So these waves, how tall do you think the swells were?
10 feet. Yeah. Yeah, we had consistent 10 feet.
How do your kids describe the story? That's what I want to know.
My daughter, I'm sure, would describe it. She was probably pretty terrified because, we drugged my son. We gave him Dramamine and got him in. We have it's just basically it's called a lee cloth. So it's a cloth that is connected to two bulkheads, and it makes a very small bed, so you can't be rolled out basically. So you just you get tucked in and hunker down. So we did that with him, and then our daughter was also in there with him, and I think she was 11 and he was 4.
Okay, so she was old enough to help herself, but he was not quite.
He was not quite, yeah. So we just, just kind of got through it. It was nerve-wracking. It was not a fun experience at all.
Damn.
So when you finally get to land.
Is this before you moved to Sacramento?
It was.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's come back up to Sacramento. So you set up shop. Where did you set up shop at?
Set up shop at my in-laws' house. So they have a large garage carport area as well. So there's a total of probably 1,200 square feet, 1,300 square feet.
Garage space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah, it's great.
For the makers of the world. They're
like,
hallelujah. Yeah.
And I also had a 40-foot container that we brought and had things in.
So you just had it shipped down?
Yeah. I actually bought it here, had it placed.
Oh, sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you start working with the brokers and everybody else.
Yeah.
And
I'm doing some jobs then, decommissioning, things that they need to have moved. So when I say decommissioning, that's pulling the mast off, taking all the rigging off of the mast, getting it ready for shipping, for trucking, getting the boat ready for trucking. So it's taking everything apart on the deck of the boat and getting it ready to.
And how common is that? Because you'll see sometimes boats on semi trucks when you're driving or you're going somewhere. How common is it for sailboats to be shipped?
It's pretty common. It depends on where they're trying to. If someone buys a boat in Virginia, they're most likely not going to sail it down. They're going to have it trucked to the West Coast.
Yeah, because you're going down through the Panama Canal and then on over.
All the way. And then that sail back up from Panama to California is not, that's upwind. So it's not a fun sail. People don't usually go that direction.
Yeah. And so you've been doing that. That was, about 10 years now that you've been here, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about the fact that you didn't add on any employees. And that had allowed you to spend more time with the wife and kids and hopefully not sailing through 10-foot swells in the middle of a storm, right? So you were telling us before we got started that you had done a really awesome trip with your son, and this is sort of leading into it, right? Like this, right. The business that you own and operate, like this is the benefit of not being huge and everything. You have a lot of flexibility. Can you tell us about that trip you just took to Louisiana with your son?
Yeah, it was great. We took off. This was last summer, once he got finished with school. We basically went to Park City straight from here, and then did some mountain biking in Deer Valley, and we played a couple of courses there, and then made our way down to St. George in southern Utah and played a few courses. So our MO was we would take part of the day and drive. We drive 4 or 5 hours, and then we go play 18 holes and then find somewhere to camp. So we pretty much did that every day, and until we got to Texas, and then Texas, you just want to get through there.
You want some AC, or you want to get the hell out of there.
Exactly. But we went over to Colorado and came down through New Mexico, and it was fun. It was
Did you go? What part? How did you get through Colorado? Did you go 70 through?
Yeah, we went through Durango and came down that way.
Oh, you
it
went
was
through Durango?
Yeah, beautiful area.
So I lived in Denver for 2 years, and then when we drove back, I'd never actually driven 70, basically like near the Utah-Colorado border.
Mm-hmm.
And the canyon drive through there is probably one of the coolest drives I've ever seen in the United States, where you drive through the canyon and you have the river flowing with you before you get into Utah. Just, you said that, and I was like, the memory and image popped back into my head.
It's like an hour of driving through Thunder Mountain if you've ever been to Disneyland.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. You did it with me. Shout out. Yeah. Thank you for flying out and flying my stuff back with me.
Nice.
Getting back to your story with your son, so you guys skate through Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where's the next golf course or mountain bike? There's no more hills, so we're not mountain biking anymore.
So we played a course that's called Tour 18, and that's outside of Dallas. And that has all the iconic holes from all the different golf courses in the United States. So it has the last three of Augusta. It has all the Island Green on the TPC. We played that was a good one. That was a fun course. And then we made it down to Mississippi, where my parents live, and they live in a place called Natchez. It's right on the river. So it's right where Louisiana makes the boot. So you cross the bridge, you're in Louisiana. Other side, you're in Mississippi.
Yeah, I was about to ask you because you grew up in Louisiana, correct?
I grew up in Mississippi. Yeah, same spot. Yeah,
same spot.
Yeah.
Now, your parents, were they entrepreneurial?
They were. Yeah, they had. My dad had a couple auto parts stores, CarQuest, and one was in Napa, and then I kind of grew up working in those stores, and then my grandmother actually and aunts and uncles also had different restaurants. So my parents ended up opening up a restaurant with my aunt and a steakhouse place.
So hence the culinary.
So for you as a kid, you had always had you always seen working as something that you need to create for yourself, or a job that you can go get from somebody else?
Yeah, just something you would do for yourself. I just watched my parents and my mom. She didn't even graduate from high school, and then later on in life, she decided she was going to go to nursing school. She went and got her GED and went through nursing school, and actually ended up getting a PhD. And she taught nursing, throughout the rest of her career.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
Is she? I'm assuming. Is she? God, I'm drawing a blank. My wife's an RN, but there's
she's a nurse
NP,
practitioner.
NP.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
And so now the travel that you did with your son, being in Mississippi, everything else, being around entrepreneurs and the restaurants, that's sort of maybe what led you into culinary.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else in your life that you feel like had been really fundamental to allowing you to be an entrepreneur, or your ways of thinking?
I didn't like working for someone else. I did that, earlier on in life, and just really did not like that, the way that felt. And you're so limited with what you can do.
You are, and if anybody comes on the podcast and they say I worked for somebody for a year, and I asked them if I could take over their business, like, you had an eye for it,
sure,
right?
Sure.
So you definitely knew that there was something there, that working for somebody else and just sort of saying, hey, I'm fine, like working as you need me to work, and then I check out, that just wasn't you, and it never has been.
Right. Yeah. I didn't enjoy it. It was
and so you did your trip to Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did you do anything on the way back?
We did not really do anything, we did more golf, basically same trip in reverse. We did the same thing. We went to Florida and stayed down there for a little while, and then came back. We played some golf in Florida and just absolutely melted. It was ridiculously hot down there.
Yeah, I could imagine. Humidity.
Yeah. And it was July, end of July.
Where'd you play?
We stayed in a place called, it's near Pensacola. So it was in that area. I don't even remember the name of the golf course we played. It wasn't anything special. It was just
a lot of the tour players live in Jupiter.
Jupiter, yeah. That's East Coast, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were in the Panhandle.
Yeah, and I was about to say, because, like, you know, it gets gnarly hot down there.
Oh,
and humid.
It's crazy. It's
like,
so bad.
You take a shower, you get out of the shower, you feel like you're still in the shower.
Well, that's what we call air conditioning down there. You know, you go outside and you get the high water mark, the tide ring. You just sweat. It's and really that just cools you off. It looks terrible, but you know you're
like I'm happy as a clam right now.
That's
I got
right.
a built-in AC. So you guys go back the same way. You play more golf. You come back. And you come back to the house you have just built. You want to talk to us a little bit about the process of building your own home?
Sure. Yeah, we built what they call an additional dwelling unit. So that was my in-laws have 5 acres right there in Rockland, and we were living not far from them, and thought, you know, let's see if we can build a place there that's small. We'll go ahead and sell our house. We had equity in the place, and thought we'll sell it and, you know, have some mortgage-free living and just kind of sock away the money. And that was the initial idea. Of course, you know, it ends up being a little bit more expensive than what we had initially thought.
Always when you build. And how old are the kids right now?
My daughter is she'll be 21 end of the month.
Son's 19
son
now?
He's 17.
17.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so are they still living with you in this house?
No, our daughter's down in San Luis Obispo. She goes to school down there, and then
Great spot, by the way, to go to school.
Love it. We were down there last week. It was great.
SLO and Santa Barbara, they're pretty much conjoined by a 30-minute freeway drive.
Yeah.
That place is cool.
It is. It is. We love to go down and visit. So
she
she's
probably
a junior.
loves it.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, she's a senior now. She just started working with Caltrans this summer, so we'll see. She's working the grind, 40 hours a week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the ADU you had built, this was like you guys are sort of starting to become empty nesters.
Right.
I dare to ask, you know, was this a midlife crisis thing?
I wouldn't say
Like building
midlife
a
crisis. I think we just saw that we wanted to go ahead and just, you know, basically try to transition out of, you know, we had, I wouldn't say it wasn't a big house. We had a 2,800 square foot house before, and we were going to just downsize, you know, 1,200 square feet is what our ADU maximum was.
Yep.
But what we did was we built it really tall. We have the peak is 24 feet in our house. So
Smart, so it feels bigger.
It feels bigger, and we actually had a attic space that once we got the final permit, we tore down the walls up there and added a spiral staircase. So it added an additional almost 600 square feet upstairs.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
so we ended up with 1,800.
But that's still an attic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's still an
Yeah.
attic.
Well, we're not admitting any guilt here. It's still an
it's
attic.
still an attic.
And
It's
It
just
is.
an attic without a door.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you did owner builder on this, correct?
Yeah. My father-in-law helped me. He, you know, obviously he's been building for a long time, so he was able to kind of plug in someone who Scott's worked with quite a bit, Scott Hinkie or Eric Hinkie, and he was able to build the frame for us, and then we went through and did the rest of the work. Basically, I acted as a general contractor. I was able to go through and get electrical.
Go through all the permitting processes,
yeah.
get everything run, figuring it out. YouTube University, I'm assuming.
That and my father-in-law, he just, you know, kind of would point me in the right direction. Hey, this is where you need to go next, because he'd done so much construction. So he was well aware of what needed to happen.
I mean, it's always good to have resources around you. And then, you know, some people are going to be like, well, you know, I would never live with my in-laws or something like that. And I think to myself, a lot of the issues I see like out in society are from at least a lack of family ties or a lack of being around family or a sense of community. You know, I like that. And personally speaking, like my in-laws and my parents, I think it'd be really cool at some point in time to, you know, especially as we start having kids and, you know, grandkids are running around, we got to grow up around our grandparents. I think that would be really cool to have like a little family compound. And some people, I mean, they might not like it, but I feel like I would really get to enjoy that. And especially if you had your own house, you know, that's sort of the big deal.
It is nice, but on the other hand, there is, you know, there's the invitations for dinner. You always feel a little bit obligated to maybe, you know, not have every meal together, but there's that, you know, and there's always they don't feel like it's an intrusion to just walk in the house, you know. So there's those things that even though we're separate in a dwelling, we're, you know, still a little bit almost like roommates.
Yeah,
in that way.
that's an interesting. I wrote down a note of like, okay, with the compound living. Alan and I had a conversation on the way home from golf yesterday and 2 days ago, and it was basically we realize that having family and your immediate support system around you is beneficial, just not in the same house.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to say that just not on the same plot as well. Alan mentioned the Baja HA HA.
Mm-hmm.
For people who have never even been on a sailboat, they're definitely not going to know what that is.
Sure.
Can you explain that?
It's a rally. Basically, it goes from San Diego to Cabo San Lucas. So there's probably, I think we had 70 or 80 sailboats that basically sail a route, and they stop along the way.
Did you have any leadership role in the Baja HA HA, or were you on somebody's boat, or were you on your own boat?
I was crew on a boat. Both had come down from Seattle, and my friend actually had helped him take that boat down. He had his captain's license, so he helped the owner take the boat down from Seattle, and then I hopped on in San Diego.
And you did what?
We fished and had a great time.
Okay, so
we sailed. I helped him sail the boat.
Okay.
You were deckhand.
He and one other guy, so there were two crew.
All right, and you
Yeah.
fished and caught your own fish and cooked it right there.
Absolutely.
Best seafood you can get.
Would you recommend it?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. The boats have to be able to maintain a minimum speed, I think, of 5 knots. So it's pretty slow. It's mellow. You leave in the morning at a certain time, and then the boats filter in. That's each leg is about 2 days, 3 days of sailing till you get to the next anchorage.
It's just checkpoint sailing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned if you come down from California to Mexico, you don't go back up because it's a hard sail.
Right. Yeah. That's not usually the direction.
If 70 to 90 of these boats go down to Mexico, what happens to all these boats?
A lot of them sit in the yard in San Carlos or in La Paz, or a lot of people just only make it as far as Cabo.
And then, so what do? Do they sell the boats in Mexico?
They sell them in Mexico. They'll get to Mazatlán or Puerto Vallarta and sell the boats.
So you're telling me the junkyard of sailboats is Mexico?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can get screaming deals in Mexico on a sailboat if you guys want a boat. San Carlos.
Okay, but how would you get it back up here?
Well, you don't. You just keep it there. Or you could bring it up. I mean, you could have a captain bring it up.
Once the boat's in the destination, if it continues to go further south, is it even more of a junkyard? Can you still come back up, or is it just that channel between like San Diego and?
Because at this point we're talking Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's really between Cabo San Lucas and Puerto Vallarta is where the deals are, and in the Sea of Cortez. Like I said, Guaymas, San Carlos.
So that's where you got your boat. I'm assuming when you said we have a boat down in Mexico,
yeah, we
right?
picked it up in Mazatlán.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I have a brother-in-law who just travels the world climbing, and he's done it for years. He's kept his life really simple. He doesn't have any kids, and he has the best life. I mean, he's in Spain right now climbing, but he's climbed all over the world. He has gear, that he leaves in different countries, and ropes and harnesses and everything. So
okay, so you answered my question in my head that nobody else knows about, which is free climber, or
he does a lot of that too.
Okay,
yeah, but he's
free solo.
He definitely does. He travels the world climbing. That's his main. I think it keeps him sane. So
he's got to be one of those guys that goes and changes the light bulbs at the top of those like 1,000-foot tall towers and gets paid $30,000. Like that's right up his alley.
It's right up his alley.
Yeah.
But he's done a lot of the half dome, and he does a lot of the big wall climbing, and where he's up there for 2 or 3 days at a time. He's never had any interest in publicizing himself doing these things. But yeah, he's in the the groups of people that you see, they're making movies about or whatever. He's right there with them climbing, and he knows all these, all these.
Like the guy that did the free solo one about in Yosemite.
Yeah. Yep. He knows. Yeah.
So I think
he's from Cordova. He's local.
Yeah.
There's so many people that they don't need a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a quality message to offer to anyone who's listening that doesn't want to, start a 9-figure business or start a business and turn it into 9 figures. It's like there's more to life sometimes than just money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your time is very valuable, and that's something that it's how do you want to spend it? I mean, I've spent my time working. I spent many years where I spent, hours and hours and hours a day. There was a time, I probably spent 10 years where I worked, 70 hours a week or whatever. It was just, I realized that was not what I wanted to do with my time, and it wasn't something I was going to do. So it worked out that I was able to make it in the way that I that I have it now.
Like, what's your favorite place that you traveled? Because I value your opinion, and like maybe do's or don'ts or any caveats to it.
Done quite a bit of traveling. Really liked Asia. That was fun. We went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and really liked it over there. I would definitely go back to Thailand and Vietnam. Cambodia was a little different, just because they really didn't have the infrastructure for tourism set up there. They're still
When was this?
recovering. This was 5 years ago.
And what part of Thailand?
Oh gosh, we flew into Phuket and then just kind of around that general area. We skipped Bangkok and went out to the coast and just really spent some time. The Similan Islands, we were out there and it was beautiful. Love it. Love Thailand. They're the nicest people.
I would agree. It was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I did a trip through the Pacific, Singapore and Thailand. We went to Singapore first and went to Thailand second. And that was a little bit of a downgrade if you've ever been to Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
But the tropical aspect and what was going on in Thailand was just as fun to me as Singapore was. But the people there were ridiculously friendly. There you go.
Yeah, India was. I've never been to India. It's my wife wants to go. I just don't have the.
Dodge the trip.
Yeah, I don't
Dodge
really
the
want to go.
trip.
It's just too many people over there.
What part does she want to go?
She doesn't even know. She just knows she wants to go to India.
Was there anything specific about the culture that really was attractive to you?
I just loved how friendly they were. I loved their food.
The food. Oh,
yeah, the
my
food was just
goodness.
amazing. Yeah, it was so good. And just they're kind people. They really are. I felt like they were genuinely, looking out for you. They weren't trying to rip you off. Vietnam was different. I felt like they were trying to rip you off everywhere you went. They wanted. Everything was the only two, English words they knew were you buy. That was what we got everywhere. And they were constantly doing things like taking your scooter and hiding it from you or, just doing things like that. So you had to pay them to get it back. So
Medical, or like if you got sick or sinus infection or anything else like that, do you have any tips or tricks, getting around that in foreign countries?
Well, in Mexico at least, their medical is great down there and it's super inexpensive. My wife
a lot of it's
broke her tooth.
OTC, right?
Yeah.
You could just
Yeah.
go to the pharmacy and get whatever you want. That's why a lot of people will drive from San Diego
Absolutely.
down into Mexico, buy a bunch of over-the-counter drugs or that are pharmaceuticals, and drive back up into California because you can't get a lot of those things without a prescription.
Well, and medical services. Like my wife broke her tooth and she went to the dentist and it was great. This guy basically made her a retainer with a tooth on it. That day, within 2 hours of being in the dentist office, it was $50, and then that got her through. She didn't look like a pirate the rest of the time.
On a sailboat
exactly.
to the sailboat junkyard,
right? And until she got home and was able to get an implant, and it was just dirt cheap for them to do the work down there, and it was modern. The dentist office was. The guy had gone to school in the United States. So.
But let's go lightning round, and we'll wrap it up here. Mm-hmm. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite sport?
Think about that one. Do I have to choose just one? No. Sport that I'm going to play is probably golf. Sport that I'm going to watch is going to be maybe surfing.
Oh,
all right.
I like that. I like that. Okay, so favorite type of boat?
Sailboat.
One place you could go to in the world and you have to stay there.
That's a tough one. For how long?
The rest of your life.
Probably Thailand.
Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
I got one for you. When's the only time it's acceptable to not put your shopping cart back?
Never.
You're the man. You're the man.
Oh, and with that, I think we're about wrapped up and done. Brooks, thank you very much for coming on and sharing
thanks for having me.
Your journey and your story. Obviously, you're connected to producer Scott.
Yes.
We are moving to a new office a couple doors over. So when we have that all set up, you're gonna have to come back and visit us. We're doing a bunch more studio stuff and shooting around, and there might even be a golf simulator in there.
So right on.
You have to come over and smack some balls with us. And so with that, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next time.